Hey people, how you doing? We're live. My name is Matt Phillips, creator of RunChatLive.com, and this is episode 171 of the Sports Therapy Association podcast, recorded normally at 8 o'clock every Tuesday on the Sports Therapy Association YouTube channel. But tonight we're at the slightly later time of 9 o'clock for reasons which will become evident shortly. Because of problems we've had with the YouTube stream over the last two episodes, until it's fixed, we're also streaming to Facebook. So if you've joined us live, like I said, if something goes wrong with the YouTube feed, which I know it has the last two episodes, and they're looking into it, then you can also watch the stream on the Sports Therapy Association Open Group, where anyone can join. And if you're an STA member, you can also watch it being streamed on the Sports Therapy Association Facebook page. That's for STA members. Bear in mind, if you are joining us tonight for the live recording from the open group, then because it's a Facebook group, then you need to click on the link, which is at the bottom of the screen here and also in the post. It's https:/b.live/comments-issue. And that's just a one-off permission you need to give to Facebook that they allow you to show your questions and comments on the screen. That's all. Once you've done that, you'll be able to comment and chat to our guests live. So we are continuing the countdown to Therapy Expo 2023, which is happening at the NEC Birmingham this November, 22nd and 23rd, bringing you as guests speakers who will be presenting in the STA Update Theatre. And in the case of most of them, they're also appearing in the other theatres at Therapy Expo, including the Hands-On Hub. Talking of the Hands-On Hub, my thanks go out to last week's guests who joined me. In episode 170, we had the pleasure of spending an hour with James Earls and Owen Lewis of Born to Move, and Anna Maria Mazzieri, the director of the ST School and creator of the very popular Hands-On Hub area at Therapy Expo. All three of these are wonderful educators in our industry, and they will be in the STA Theatre at some point. You can see therapyexpo.co.uk for details, and also in the main theatres. And as you might have seen released today, they've also got together, and I was part of this, I'll just add that disclaimer now, this creation of the story, which is a concept a few of us put together, which produces 5 principles. And the idea of these principles is together they play a hugely important part in being a modern evidence-informed practitioner. So they were heterarchy, integrated anatomy, natural movement, play, and critical thinking. If you want more information on that, then go and listen to the episode. It's there on YouTube if you wish to watch it, or if you prefer listening, then go to any of the podcast apps of your choice and it will be there. You can also go to the STA webpage, which is the sta.co.uk podcast. If you look at the podcast link, you'll see all links to all the podcasts there as well. So there we go. That was last week. Right. Anyway, back to tonight. My guest is Sonia Fierro, osteopath and founder of Recover Stronger. Sonia is a fantastic educator, has been on the podcast, I think 3 times before, talking about CrossFit, flexibility, mobility, and also the myths in CrossFit. That was episodes 84 and 82. And also in episode 121, talking about pre-post pregnancy, talking about guidelines and her own experience. And tonight we'll also be joined by Alia, who is Sonia's little one, which is the reason we're coming out at 9 o'clock tonight, because that's when Alia is going to be asleep, isn't it? Not necessarily. I think we're going to be joined by both of them, but that's fine, because like I said to Sonia, Alia is part of what makes Sonia Fierro, and we're very excited to have her at the STA, or in the STA Update Theatre this year. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about, in particular, her main presentation in the STA Update Theatre, which is going to be on the 11:30 a.m. on day 2, which is the Thursday, and that's going to be simply titled Functional Flexibility, which is a great topic, very topical at the moment, with people questioning some of the conceptions and ideas we have about flexibility, and is there too much stretching going on and this sort of thing. So it's going to be a great episode. As always, if you joined us live and you want to comment, then feel free. There's people in the lounge as we speak now. Glenn Murphy is here. He's come up onto the screen as I speak. Like I say, if you're joining us from the Facebook open group, then you will need to click that link that's at the bottom of the page or in the comments. Okay, I'll put it up again during the show just so you can see it, and I'll read it out briefly for you, just so you listening can see it. If you do want to join us and leave some comments, then you are going to need to go to the normal https:// and then b.live/comments -issue. Okay, you just need to do it once and then you never have to do it again. Right, time enough done. I'm going to press the button. I can't guarantee she's going to be with us straight away because, like I say, she's got a little, just over, I think, 18-month-old now with her. So we'll see how it goes. But it gives me great pleasure to bring you Sonia Fierro of Recover Stronger. Hey, Sonia.
Hi everyone.
Right, I reckon we got 2 minutes, no?
How yeah, pretty much, because of course, like she's gonna be asleep, not even close tonight.
But it's kind of cool in a way, if anything is cool at this time in an 18 months, looking after an 18-month-old, because we were just saying off air, I think the first time I met you was 2 years ago at Therapy Expo, where you were presenting with Robert Crowley. You were doing a great presentation. I had the pleasure of introducing that. And that's when I discovered, and I don't think many other people knew, that you were pregnant with a little one here. And then the year later, we had the pleasure of meeting her, crawling around at the Update Theatre when you were there presenting, as you will be this year with the Women in Sports Therapy. And now a year on and 18 months.
Yeah.
And much more relaxing, I imagine. No, it's all sorted now, isn't it? Plain sailing.
Of course, all sorted. Sleeping through the night, and it's a roller coaster.
If you listen to the podcast and you can't see the sarcasm on Sonia's face at the moment, then there is a lot of sarcasm there.
Yeah.
And I think little Aaliyah is making mummy's life challenging, but yet rewarding at the same time. It's a double-edged sword, isn't it, childhood?
Yeah. So if you hear me making weird noises or saying things in Italian, it's not for you, it's for her.
Yeah, that's important as well. If you listen to the podcast, sounds like there's going to be two Sonias tonight, one in Italian, speaking in a baby voice, and another talking to me. But anyway, I mean, it's very interesting. You've been on the Women in Sports Therapy podcast as well, 𝐤𝐴, talking about the challenges of having a newborn and then a toddler, and being a woman in the industry and how things have changed for you. Is it still, that's not what the whole show is going to be about tonight, but meeting you again and seeing you, is it still a challenge mixing work with this? Obviously, it's kind of a loaded question.
For me and my particular situation and where I live and everything, yes, is quite a challenge. Of course, she's had to pick like the noisiest toy right now, because a lot of clinics expect early and late shifts. A lot of clinics, this especially around London, will ask for weekends, especially Saturday, and is a challenge for someone that hasn't really got family around and anyone else that can really take care of her. The evening shifts are probably one of the hardest for me because she's breastfeeding, she needs someone at night, and childcare doesn't really happen until 8 or 9 p.m. by the time you will be home.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating episode you did, like I say, with Dr. Fiona Higgs, and we did have, I know Fiona said to me, it struck a note with a lot of female therapists who are going through similar things. It is tricky, and obviously, unfortunately, we talk about how we're getting better with the quality and things like that, but it's a totally different ballgame if you're a mother with a kid. People do treat you differently, don't they? But like I say, yes, people.
Also, yeah. There is of course a part of that as well. And it's interesting because I mean that's a different topic from tonight. But a lot, like when I was studying osteopathy, there was actually a lot of moms and even new moms because they wanted a job that they could do from home. And oh my God. Sorry.
That's fine. No, you keep going. It's fine.
Like they didn't have to go, to the office for, etc. But then, unless you are like in a village or you have your own setup, maybe at home, like there's other challenges.
Yeah. No, definitely. Right. Well, like I said, it's a topic which we could talk about all evening, but if you haven't listened to it, listen to the 𝐤𝐴 episode, Women in Sports Therapy with Dr. Fiona Higgs. It's a great episode, and really worth checking in. But tonight, maybe a little about you for people who don't know you. It's quite an amazing life you've had up to now. Tell us a little bit about things you've been involved in and how you've got to where you are today.
Yeah, so I actually studied something completely different when I finished high school. So I went in marketing and media, worked a few years in that environment and in photography. That's kind of the time when I moved to London and the UK. And then I kind of got bored with, the office life. Growing up, I was an athlete myself. I've always been involved in sport. I always thought I would do something with that. Like my dream was to be a professional athlete, but I got injured. And then I stopped training basically through university and the first few years of work. When I was here, I got fed up with the office, and at the same time, I got into CrossFit. And that's where I rediscovered, I think it was the first, it was the years of, I don't know if people know about this, but 𝘱𝑳𝑒𝑙 Leopard and Calista Reb becoming quite famous is when, the crossbows and foam roller and bands became popular. And I was like, oh, actually, I would like to do that. What can I do? At the time, I had to support myself. I was working full time, so physiotherapy wasn't really an option because you have to go to university full time. So I went down the route of sports therapy. I qualified as a sports therapist along, my office job, and then eventually I made the move, working for myself. And then I joined an amazing physiotherapist who was. He had a private practice, so I was working private practice with him, but it was also the lead physio for British diving. So that's how I got involved with elite sport. So I started working alongside him. I learned so much from him and from the sports physician, the sports medicine doctor that was part of the same team. And then from there, I worked as a sports therapist lead for a rugby team, just a local one. And then, just kept going, set up my own clinic. I've always been involved because I was a CrossFitter, and then I got into weightlifting and later on in powerlifting, always involved in sports, strength sports. I always set up my clinic within gyms or, CrossFit boxes. And then I kept my elite sport work as well. I worked with British fencing, quite a few international competitions I cover for them as well, a little bit of British swimming and diving, again through the years, and then motor racing, endurance motor racing as well. I was at Le Mans. When was that? 2020? It was kind of in between the lockdowns, I think, or time goes by so fast. At some point after the first bout of COVID, maybe after the second one as well, and that was a lot of fun. And then Alia came along. I've been working on and off in the online world as well, programming for people. So that's what I kind of focus on now. Oh yeah, along that I qualified as an osteopath as well.
Just squeeze that in there in between setting kind of like deadlift world records and things. Yeah, also did study to be an osteopath. And amazing. Yeah, such an interesting past. There's a wonderful couple of episodes we've got with you talking about CrossFit and stuff. And that's going to come back tonight because you mentioned, like, for example, Kelly Starrett and 𝘱𝑳𝑒𝑙 Leopard and stuff. Is it? I mean, I don't want to. The guy was in some ways so ahead of his time and very magnetic and has done an awful lot of good. I'll say that first of all for the fitness industry. He's really made a lot of debates happen. But when it comes to things like some of the things he was prescribing, like how hard he proposed that you rolled yourself out with kind of like devices, and did he swing the pendulum a little bit too far away and cause us to kind of have a bit of a smell when we heard the word CrossFit?
Yeah, I think, like you're saying, it's done a lot of good, and I think like the really the big benefit that it introduces that made a lot more people aware of the fact that you need to take care of your own body, and especially if you do any sport or even any activity, as just a recreational athlete, you still have to take care of your body. It's not just about getting a treatment, but then I think it's something that happens with any brand really, or any branded therapy or like philosophy, that you kind of have to like go all on and full on whatever you're saying, and I think that's what happened. So it's always been everything about, you know, foam rolling and pressing here and there and bends, and of course it's been too much, because if you only do that, it still doesn't work. And then it got, I think, hung up on a few concepts that, well, I don't personally agree with. I know there's other coaches that don't agree with, for example, like is stand on how you should squat and your squatting position. But you know, I think it's part of anything. I could find something in most philosophies that are a brand, that are, you know, a certification. There's always going to be something that maybe doesn't stand up to the evidence as much, but because it was part of, you know, their branding, their marketing, is hard for them to come away from that.
That's a great answer. It's probably one of the greatest answers I've ever heard when it comes to commenting on that. So yeah, that's great. I love it. And that kind of ties into what you're going to be talking about at Therapy Expo. Just to bring it up on the screen for those of you who do like a little flash of image on the screen. If you listen to the podcast, you can't see this, but on the screen we just got here, it's just basically taken from the program at Therapy Expo. So 23rd of November, which is day 2, 11:30. Sonia is going to be in the STA, which is the Sports Therapy Association Update Theatre, talking about functional flexibility and some of the myths and misconceptions. So, I mean, it's suddenly become a very interesting topic. We've talked about it before.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much of your talk. Oh no, I'm not going to put anything into it. What is the goal of your talk? Let's start off with that. What's your aim for people who come along to listen to you?
So for the STA talk, the aim is really trying to put into practice some of the principles that I've talked about in the podcast before, that I talk about in my, for example, Instagram page, and that I will be presenting the day before at Therapy Expo. I think when it comes to flexibility and mobility and, you know, all of that, people are not really sure what to do anymore, because for, you know, before it was, oh, stretch everything, and then we went all you know, the opposite way to, you know, never stretch, you just need mobility. And now we are kind of coming back somewhere in the middle with more evidence, you know, being available, but also with people that are actually looking at the evidence that was out there and saying, wait a minute, actually nobody has ever said that this doesn't work. We just need to be able to apply correctly. And in the past few years, as you said, I've talked about this before here in other podcasts and at Therapy Expo, but I think it can still remain quite confusing for people, and not really, you know, you may not be able to apply what I talk about unless you see examples. So the idea is to bring some case studies, or what I would love is for actually people that are there, they are in the public, to, you know, say, okay, I have this issue, or I have this person with this issue, and then, you know, talk about that together with the principles that I have presented the day before, and come up with, okay, this is an idea of starting plan that we could do for this person, and show some exercises. So it wants to be an active, interactive, and let's move around session.
That's great, and that's such a nice idea, and hopefully it'll be something which on day one you'll be able to let people know about. But for people who aren't familiar with Therapy Expo, you've got the kind of inclusion theatres where the doors are shut and no one else can get in, with kind of seats for 100 or so, or sometimes more. And then you've got the external STA theatre, and then also next to us for the second time we're going to have the Hands-On Hub, which is run by Anna Maria Mazzieri, last week's guest, and they're both open air theatres, so it's a really nice chance for people to ask questions, get more interactive. People walking around can hear it and suddenly stop, which is lovely. They're the people you want to reach. I mean, it's nice to have your fanboys at the front kind of going, Sonia, that's good. That's good for my ego, with the t-shirts on. But it's also lovely to reach people as educators who haven't heard of this before and suddenly go, oh, that sounds interesting. So definitely interactive will be great. And I'll be there trying to get people to feel confident to actually ask you questions face to face.
Yeah, it's always the little challenge, right? People are always a little bit scared, but we're on day 2, so hopefully they
Oh, they'll
got
be
over
fine.
that.
Yeah, it won't take long at all. Won't take long at all. So I always think, first of all, that when it comes to these discussions, which we'll get into a little bit, I think one of the stumbling blocks maybe that people get confused or rightly or wrongfully is kind of the difference between flexibility and mobility. Is it important to distinguish them, or do you think people are getting too bogged down with it?
I think it depends on the way you're talking about that. I still think that semantics is important, and I think I take a lot of this from the person I have learned so much about flexibility from, and the entire course I've done. I think is important because that empowers the person, the client, the patient, to actually be in charge of their own journey and their own recovery, and be able to really look after their bodies. Sometimes we tend to simplify things a little bit too much, in my opinion, and that's not always conducive to them actually know what to do. And some people may just do it because they really want to help, and simplifying things seems like a good way to help the person. But then, as we were saying before, there are some brands out there that I don't particularly agree with, because they tend to oversimplify, and to me it's almost like considering that the person in front of them is not smart enough to understand what like the truth is. So yeah, I think is important. The difference. So what is out there, and what most people think the difference is that flexibility is passive, and is your passive range of motion. So they think as stretching as passive stretching, whereas mobility is usually described as the active range of motion, so what you can use of that range. In reality, in the literature, mobility is moving from point A to point B in space. So that's why mobility tools usually are occupational therapy gadgets. So is your walker, is your crutches, is something that gets that person from one point in space to another one, whereas everything else has been flexibility, but they got kind of muddled up because some brands started.
So to give us an idea, I mean, you do mentorship, so you probably speak to a lot of therapists. What do you think some of our listeners what mistakes do you think they may be doing with their clients because of misinformation and misconceptions they've got about flexibility? What are some maybe a case history?
I would say there's two that are equally as important. So one is that they think that stretching will help with injuries in terms of stretching after activities. And we actually don't have much evidence of that. Like if you go for a run and then you stretch a bit your muscles, there's not really much evidence that says that it's going to prevent any injuries down the line. Now, there is a preventative side of stretching, but it's not that. It doesn't work like that. Sorry.
That's fine. You're doing a grand job. Don't worry.
The way stretching helps prevent injuries is when. Okay, yeah. You want to say something too? Is when you actually actively work at creating more length, so they can prevent, for example, pulled muscles. Alia, hey, Baba, 1 moment. Yes, 1 moment. Good. So that's one, and the other one is because there's been so much focus on mobility and active range in the last probably 10 years now. They completely disregard stretching, and they say stretching is not needed, and it's something that you don't have to waste time doing. I think those are the two biggest misconceptions, and as I will show you in Therapy Expo, it doesn't quite work like that.
That's fantastic. I mean, it's not surprising, is it? Because we live in a very polarized world now. Facebook and all the kind of algorithms have made sure that it's just yes or no, it's black and white, it's love it, hate it, everything is like that. So it's not surprised therapists are getting swept away in that. But it's interesting because I know that, for example, okay, my gait analysis presentation is very similar to yours in that I think people used to do all the wrong stuff with gait analysis, and now they're thinking gait analysis is not worth doing at all because you can't tell how someone runs and there's no point putting anyone on a treadmill. And it's kind of like reeling them back in again. The pendulum's gone too far the other way. Yeah. And I know a couple of other speakers who are doing the same thing. 10 years ago, they were saying one thing and now everyone's gone too far the other way. And I'm hoping that that's quite a healthy thing. If most of the presentations are about, enjoy the place in the middle, don't expect everything to be at either side, that sounds quite good for therapy, doesn't it?
I think it is. It probably makes it a lot more challenging, and I think this is one of the reasons why the polarization kind of happened. As social media developed, like you're saying, is that's the place where there is a lot of black and white, but a lot of the certifications and brands kind of grew in the last 10 years as well. And of course, anything that is polarized is a little bit easier to sell because you can go against something else, and it's a lot harder to sell it depends, because as I was saying before, it leaves people like it doesn't give them something they can apply straight away.
Yeah.
And that is really challenging, but it's also the beauty of our profession. Sorry.
That's fine. You keep going. No, I mean, that is something, that is an element which I think listeners to the podcast will be familiar with now, because so many of our guests have said that one of the challenges of being a therapist is just accepting the fact that you haven't got all the answers and just learning to be a bit more humble and just being content with saying to your client, this is interesting, we're going to look into this. I don't know exactly what's going on at the moment, because you're human. You wouldn't say that. But the fact is, we can't pre-destine what is going on with humans because there's so many different variables, and humans are very complex as opposed to complicated, which is a lovely distinction. Complicated is like a car, but if you've got the manual and you learn it, you can fix anything, or throw it away. But complex means there's different factors intertwining and giving us scenarios which are totally different every single time that person walks in the room, and there's not a manual for it. So it's tricky though, because like you say, marketing and selling and the old-fashioned way of being a therapist is we can learn it and we can fix anybody, and everybody who walks in suddenly has got the thing we studied last month. And it's very interesting what you say. What I am interested in, and I'm going to just talk until Ali is happy and you are content. I don't know whether you are familiar with, because you very admirably don't spend too much time on social media because you haven't got time. You've got other far more important things to do. But there is a current trend at the moment about a couple of papers that came out in 23 and I think one in 20 about highlighting how stretching, I think I can use that word, can actually strengthen muscles and cause hypertrophy. Okay. Now, I get the impression, I feel that a lot of people have jumped on this and kind of gone, right, I told you stretching was good. And a lot of people have come out of the woodwork and are now saying, that's it, everybody's got to stretch. I get the impression that they haven't actually looked into the papers in enough detail, because the amount of stretching you need to do to get hypertrophy is pretty much something that no one's going to want to do. I mean, one paper suggests it's got to be something like an hour of maximum stretch every day for 6 weeks, which I don't think many people are going to hold on to a calf stretch for an hour. But it's still significant. And it's interesting how none of us ever, and I'm guilty of this, none of us ever made that association of stretching is still a load. It's still a stress. Yeah. And that definitely opens a door to, actually, I could listen to this now, because any load will cause an adaptation from the body. So are you into this? Have you been following this and seeing what's going on? And is it interesting for you?
I know the papers you refer to. I'll be completely honest. I haven't spent time to really look at the details of those specific papers. So I don't know as much, but there's been papers in the past few years. I think a couple of I actually referenced in my talks last year and the year before that I've looked at stretching, passive passive flexibility, passive static stretching in different ways. And that's, I think, always been one of the issues with this, with flexibility and the papers, is that, like you're saying, sometimes the protocols are not realistic to apply in real life. But we know that there is some people that have been experimenting with these, and one of them is gymnastic bodies that I've actually been using and following for years. They actually use a lot of stretching. Some of it is not stretching, is like what would be classed as mobility, so dynamic active type of flexibility in between exercises. And now we have some papers that support that say that if you do some work in between your sets, for example, you can create more hypertrophy and still see your range changing in a positive way. But yeah, I can see what you're saying, like some people jumping on that. And that's always, the case in.
You're very wise. Maybe it's because you said you were in marketing originally, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yes, you know what marketing is about. So it's interesting having that combination with you. But it's up to people like you. Thankfully, we've got you and hopefully a lot of other speakers in Therapy Expo, which kind of point this out, because otherwise marketing's powerful and it exists for a reason. Yeah. What about, I'm really interested to hear from you, an example of where you think it could be make-believe or something you've heard where a client or where a therapist has dismissed stretching where it could actually have helped and should have been part of a rehab program or something. Can you think off the top of your head of something or scenario where someone might go, oh, you don't need to stretch that, or that's going to be dangerous, where really it should have been done?
Well, I mean, I can't say a specific, case or describe a specific case, but I think it's been happening everywhere. And probably I'm also guilty of that. I've been through that same journey, because what I learned when I was studying sports therapy first, and even with my degree that didn't finish that long ago, just a couple of years ago, with the osteopathic degree, that's what you hear now is stretching is kind of bad because it's passive, because you don't learn to control the range. Is mobility what you need? So I also kind of stepped away a little bit from stretching for a few years and prescribed mostly mobility exercises. And then once I started actually reading more, researching more, and studying more about flexibility, because it's something I always enjoyed and had an interest even as an athlete when I was younger, I kind of went back. So for me, the biggest mistake is that people don't realize that you can't strengthen or you can't learn to control a range that you don't have. And you're not gonna really get much in terms of a bigger range unless you have that passively. And we know that the best way to improve that is passive static stretching. Yes, you can use loads, you can there is a paper, again, has been misinterpreted a lot, that said that strength training, so basically being under a load, can be as effective as passive static stretching, but it depends how you do it. If you always train in half of your range, you're not gonna get more range out of that. If you're always squatting half squats, you're not gonna get a deeper squat by just squatting under load, no matter how much you load. And that's where we see a lot of people, for example, in strength sports, that can't access bigger ranges. And then they see this paper saying, oh no, but that one said that I don't need stretching, I can just use weights. It's well, it still depends how you use them, how you apply that. People forget that flexibility is this kind of container, is the box within you can apply all the other fitness components. So you can't be strong in a range you don't have. You can't be agile, powerful, coordinated. There's nothing that happens outside the range you can access.
Fantastic. No, I like the way you put that. That's really good. Yeah, because if you haven't got the flexibility is a very important part of mobility as well as other factors. And if you haven't got it, then that's going to hamper your mobility. So yeah.
Yeah.
But how? Go on.
Where what I would love to like show during the talk at Therapy Expo is that side of things where, well, I'm not a fan of the word functional, because often functional, is
Can't change it now. That's the
associated.
title of your talk. Sorry.
Yeah, because it's often associated with certain exercises, the
Right.
CrossFit, the high intensity, like functional fitness word, and it's not that. Like, is actually applying something to like your goal. In that, that's the sense of functional flexibility. So we can show how, if you don't have a range and you need it because of your sport, or even just because of your activity of daily life, how we can work towards that with passive and active type of flexibility. But then there's the reverse of that as well, where you may have too much flexibility that you can't control, and this happens, for example, with hypermobile people, and we know that they can have quite a lot of pain as well, and working flexibility is important for them too. It's just a completely different way. Like, we need to learn to control and to apply brakes in that case. It's not more range.
Excellent. So if I understand right, a lot of what you're saying is you've got to really study the person in front of you in an individual case-by-case basis and see what they need. And as soon as you start saying, oh yeah, everybody needs this or everybody needs that, then you're failing. Thinking of that, what about different populations? So for example, I mean, I work with runners, and that kind of historically I've kind of suggested that if you can walk, then you've got enough, I don't know what word to say here now, flexibility or mobility. Well, flexibility. If you can walk, you've got enough flexibility, for example, in your in the pelvis for hip extension to actually run, because the increase isn't that much. It's a couple of degrees. So everyone doing these hip flexor stretches to try and get more hip extension, you've only got about 15 before your pelvis gets in the way. So I've always kind of warned runners that for running, unless you're sprinting, which is another sport, you probably don't need to increase that range you're talking about as much as you think, in contrast to a ballet artist. But what about kind of everyday populations? Because I can imagine that even sports people could lack flexibility. If anything, sports people, depends on the sport, but what I'm trying to say is everyday people who don't do sport, do you find in your experience that that's where the flexibility may be an issue?
It can be, yeah, for sure it can be. We need to remember that our lifestyle is not exactly conducive to keeping the body mobile. Even just general activity, mobility, movement. Sometimes people can't access that. There's also, hey, I know. Can Mama finish this talk? Just 10 minutes? You got your book?
It's a good conversation.
Yeah, trying to convince her. So sorry. Let me get one moment. Sorry.
Yeah, so that's fine. You calm it down a bit. So yeah, it is true. We've had a lot of guests saying that everyday life is about less and less moving, sadly, whether it's sitting in your car, sitting at the desk. People are not using the range they've got. And we were talking about this with, who was it last? Oh, I think it was with James Earls of Born to Move, just pointing out that life is getting very sedentary. So it's not surprising.
So, yes, what I was saying is that our lifestyle is not really conducive to movement in general, so we can see a decrease even in that basic flexibility that we need for just our normal life. And then we know that we age, we lose some of our flexibility. So if you combine everything and movement or training, activities for the elderly are not really common nowadays. Again, there's people that are really changing the narrative again. But they threw sick man. But it's not common. So we see a big decline in just normal flexibility. And even something as simple as, reaching for the top shelf. We know that a lot of people in their 40s or 50s can get problems with shoulders. If the range is not there, we need to restore that. But what you were saying about running, and I think we talked about this before. I know. Mama is almost done. Okay.
I'm just going to keep waving.
Away from the screen doesn't really work. Like, you don't need. I think that's something that people really associate with flexibility. Is like, oh, flexibility is something that you do to get the splits, or a bridge, or some crazy position.
Or just touch your toes. Like, a lot of people see touching toes as a sign of fitness, and yet I don't think, even in everyday life and in a lot of sports, actually definitely in running, touching your toes seems to be not a top priority. And yet it's still held as like, even in police tests, I still meet police and firemen who are being trained, and one of their fitness tests is how close can you get in the sit and reach test. And it's like,
there is the standard positions are, again, difficult to choose, because there's not something that really means that you're healthier, or you're not gonna have problems or anything like that. And we always need to choose what the ranges that we are aiming for based on the activity that we are doing. So if I have a runner coming to me and they have problems, but they have enough range for running, unless they are interested because they want, they enjoy, or they want to do more range flexibility work, is not something I would prioritize. Depending on their age, I may suggest that they keep some of it, just because the decline. And I actually have a runner triathlete client. Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
It's very hard for you.
That made a comment about that not long ago, saying that basically she wants to keep doing. She knows she doesn't need more range, but she wants to keep doing the flexibility work because she doesn't want to get any worse. Like, she's close to her 50s, so of course, like, she sees a little bit of a decline, and then we know that static stretching, for example. Oh my God!
Let's give you a little bit of time. Whilst we're sorting out little Alia, who is obviously missing mummy, I'm just going to bring up, and I'll read this out loud. It's not just the Update Theatre, obviously, which Sonia is appearing in. Sonia is a very popular speaker, has been at Therapy Expo for multiple years, and this year is no exception. So I've already mentioned the one in the STA Update Theatre, which is on the second day at 11:30. If we go back to Wednesday, the first day, which is the 22nd of November, Sonia is going to be part of a 4 women panel called Women in Sports Therapy panel, hosted by Dr. Fiona Higgs. And it's going to be a chance for Sonia Fierro to take the stage with Anna Maria Mazzieri will be there, Michelle Lyons, female pelvic health specialist, and also Dr. Fiona Higgs, to talk about being a woman in kind of the sports therapy business, which is going to be great. It was really popular last year, very interactive, a definite go-to if you're interested in that kind of thing to do with therapy. But then on the Wednesday at Theatre B, there is at 4:00 in the afternoon, Flexibility Isn't Dead, Effective Rehab and Performance Flexibility Programming. And I'm interested in, on the Thursday in the morning before STA, it's back pain and lifting the why, when and how of training the deadlift. And the deadlift is such an art, it seems, which so many DVDs and instructions and different versions of it out of there. And I'm sure many of our listeners give the deadlift and the many variations that are there. And I'm interested in people who are listening in the lounge, for example. Do you give deadlifts? What version of the deadlift do you give? Have you got any personal rules as to what you should do, what you shouldn't do? Anything you think is linked to back pain? And then when Sonia gets a chance, I'm interested in, she mustn't give it all away, obviously, because you're going to have to go to Theatre B for that. But I'm interested in hearing what the links are between back pain and the deadlift. I'm just going to take that off the screen. So yeah, without giving too much of it away, deadlifting and back pain. Interesting topic. I mean, we're talking to somebody who, is that you've got the world record? Is he still got the world record or someone beating him?
I wish I had a world record. No, it was Alia, please. It was a national record that unfortunately has been taken from me not too long ago. Yeah.
But yeah, so you've got a lot of experience of the deadlift. Yeah, give us a couple of ideas linking back pain and deadlift.
Sorry, couldn't hear you there. Okay. Alia, can you wait for a moment?
She doesn't want to do it anymore.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on tonight with all this.
I think she's very tired, actually, probably.
Not usually.
But that's okay. If she is needs to go to bed, then we could wrap things up if you want. I was just interested in the deadlift and back pain, but for that, people are going to have to go to Theatre B for it. So I'm going to wrap it up because otherwise she's going to start just exploding.
Yeah.
So
sorry, I don't think we can last any longer.
No, that's okay. You can go whenever you like, Sonia. I can tell people how to get in contact with you, okay? You can stay there or go whatever you like.
Really quickly, I don't think there's a connection there.
That's fine. So we can't actually hear Sonia anymore. But if you do want to follow Sonia, then like I say, the best way to do it is probably the Instagram account. If you're in the live lounge, then I'm going to just put a little page, this up on the screen already. It's a fantastic Instagram account. It gives Instagram everything it's supposed to be. It's very visual. It's divided up wonderfully into different categories. And there's a whole load of great free CPD on there. Obviously, there's links. Sonia's got courses. She's got mentorship going on as well. But even it's one of these great examples of where just going to the Instagram feed, which is recover.stronger. Just look up Sonia Fierro on Instagram and you will see a load of information there, which I would suggest that you do check out. So sorry, it's recover_stronger. That would be it for Instagram. So I think that is probably going to be as much as we can pull Alira away from Sonia for tonight. If you have enjoyed the episode, you've got any questions for Sonia, then like I say, go along to the Instagram or send them to me, matt@thesta.co.uk. And then I could forward them on to Sonia where she could maybe, I'm sure she's got time during the day just to read your letters and answer them. That won't be any problem at all for her. Next week, we're actually going to be back to 8 o'clock. We're going to be on Wednesday because next Tuesday, obviously, is Halloween. So if you'd like to come and join us live next week, then join us at 8 o'clock on the Wednesday, the 1st of November. My guest is going to be Alistair Beverley, the Learning Disability Physio, LD Physio, who's going to be in the STA Theatre at Therapy Expo on day 2 at 12:15 p.m. with his presentation, Keeping Your Hair On, What You Weren't Taught About Communication. That's, it's so difficult not to get excited about all of the topics, all the presentations, because obviously I chose these. So obviously I'm going to. But Alistair Beverley is going to draw on his wealth of information about working with people with learning disabilities and apply them to other people. Because at the end of the day, we're all people, which is like something which he tries to teach on his website and on his courses. So yeah, Keeping Your Hair On, What You Weren't Taught About Communication with Alistair Beverley. He'll be telling us all about that next Wednesday, not Tuesday, Wednesday at 8 o'clock. So if you want to join us there, just follow the social medias. I think I've got about 30 seconds to say thank you to Sonia. Have you got any sound from Sonia? No, your sound went, Sonia. Got no sound from you. Something was clicked. I reckon Ali has pulled the plug on you. There's no microphone. I think you're back.
Can you hear me
now? Say something. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, I think it was my
your beautiful daughter. Just there you go. So yeah, I've signed off for you. Thank you so much for giving us your time.
Thank you so much. And yeah, sorry about the screaming. Not the easiest.
That's a problem. You've got courses. You've got courses going on.
I have. Sorry, she just starts screaming as soon as I start talking. I have mentorship, like one-on-one at the moment, and a course is starting early next year. So I'll talk more about this
Therapy Expo.
probably in the next month, and then a Therapy Expo. I should have
Fantastic
details of this. So
amazing.
I can
Right.
let you
Well,
know.
I so appreciate it. Thank you so much for the time. I know it's been really hard trying to concentrate, listening to what I'm saying, and then baby giving you the evil eyes. So thank you so much. People in the live lounge, thank you very much for joining us. And hopefully we will see some of you next Wednesday at 8 o'clock. But once again, thank you to Sonia Fierro.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good night, everyone.